Hi readers, Lee here, and it is time for a spooky book haul. It would not be Halloween, and today is the 30th, if I didn't do at least one book haul this month that has horror in it. And, sorry, gonna move shit around here. And I hesitated on, and I waited to do this until at the end of the month, because I have done horror videos within the last 2 months. So, and actually kind of all year long. I like horror, I like spooky, I like witchy, I like all of that. This one is a little bit different. I went straight to it. I forgot to say hello. Welcome back to my channel, Lila Wanders and Reads. And I had prepared so hard for this. Go figure. Speaking of preparation, I'll get to it when I get to it, but I did do my preparation on this. I read through all the summaries. I looked up a little bit of the authors, and while I was doing that, I realized that one of these authors had another book that I had heard about recently but did not buy because I was trying to be good. And then I saw that she had written it and it was available at my local Barnes & Noble, so I went and bought 9 other books. Anywho, we'll get there when we get there. Anywho, full disclosure, in this haul there were 2 that were directly influenced by Mother Horror, Sadie Hartman, from her Patreon page. I follow her on Patreon. I'm a paid member. I also follow her on Instagram, where she also gives tons of ideas about spooky reading, about horror. So I highly recommend checking her out on Instagram. It is great. I love her. And she is the reason I've spent a lot of money on books this year, because she talks about new horror releases on Tuesday and I can't resist. I have to buy them. All right. Are you ready? Let's go. Stephen King recently called this book out on Twitter. That is The Nesting by C.J. Cooke. I have another C.J. Cooke book, The Lighthouse Witches, and I have not read that yet either. I bought that for Witchy Reads, which I think was in April, but I just haven't gotten around to it. I really need to focus on looking at my own books, and I've got some time off coming up for my birthday. I think I'm going to spend some time inside looking at my own books, categorizing them, and stop spending so much money. But back to The Nesting, a novel. Architect Tom Faraday is determined to finish the high-concept, environmentally friendly home he's building in Norway, in the same place where he lost his wife, Aurelia, to suicide. It was their dream house, and he wants to honor her with it. Lexi Ellis takes a job as his nanny and immediately falls in love with his 2 young daughters, especially Gaia. But something feels off in the isolated house nestled in the forest along the fjord. Lexi sees mysterious, muddy footprints inside the home. Aurelia's diary appears in Lexi's room one day, and Gaia keeps telling her about seeing the terrifying sad lady. Soon, Lexi suspects that Aurelia didn't kill herself, and that they are all in danger from something far more sinister lurking around them. So again, Stephen King called this out as a great book, and I look forward to reading this and The Lighthouse Witches some point in the near future. However, that is not the book that I'm going to put in my to be read soon pile, which gets added to and then mysteriously disappears. Anywho, that's neither here nor there. This is one of the Mother Horror inspired books. The themes and tropes, I think, was about stuff in the north of Europe. Don't quote me on this. But The Lost Village by Camilla Sten, translated by Alexandra Fleming. This is the book that made me stop and go get another book, but I'll get to that in a minute. They call The Lost Village The Blair Witch Project meets Midsommar in this brilliantly disturbing thriller from Camilla Sten, an electrifying new voice in suspense. Documentary filmmaker Alice Lindstedt has been obsessed with the vanishing residents of an old mining town dubbed the Lost Village since she was a little girl. In 1959, her grandmother's entire family disappeared in this mysterious tragedy, and ever since, the unanswered questions surrounding the only two people who were left, a woman stoned to death in the town center and an abandoned newborn, have plagued her. She's gathered a small crew of friends in the remote village to make a film about what really happened. But there will be no turning back. Not long after they've set up camp, mysterious things begin to happen. Equipment is destroyed. People go missing. As doubt breeds fear and their very minds begin to crack, one thing becomes startlingly clear to Alice. They are not alone. They're looking for the truth. But what if it finds them first? Come find out. So, the reason I ran right out and got the resting place is because of something that really spoke to me in the foreword. And that is, a recurring theme this year in my reading is women as something to be afraid of. And this is a portion of the foreword from The Lost Village. We perceive women suffering from mental illness with a sort of paradoxical double-sidedness. Both victims and monsters, simultaneously infantilized and feared. A certain level of dysfunction is accepted, but beyond a certain point, it flips. Women are supposed to be gentle, devoted, loving, and above all else, rule-abiding. Undeniable suffering is bad, and anger is worse. A woman suffering from severe anxiety or untreated mania isn't going to have dinner on the table by 6 o'clock. Skip ahead. Throughout history, women suffering from mental illness have been hidden away, burned at the stake, lobotomized, and sterilized. So this is going into my read soon pile. I'll just put it on top. I can work that out later. I'm going to skip ahead because let's go along with the theme. Before I get to the other Camilla Sten book, I want to talk about The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. This is a book that I believe I had a copy of once, not long ago, within the last 4 years, and that I tried to read, and then I DNF'd it and gave it away or took it to the used bookstore or something like that. I have done this once before with one of Grady Hendrix's books. That was My Best Friend's Exorcism. Read it in 2017, gave it a 1 star, got rid of it somehow, and then came back to it in like 2021 and loved it. So I'm going to give this another chance. And before I get to what it's to the blurb on the back, this is why I pushed everything aside and went to it. We talked about women here. And one of the sub-themes of the Final Girl Support Group is society's obsession with violence and the use of women for entertainment. In this instance, this is me speaking, not what I looked up on the internet, violence toward women is part of the obsession and how society just loves that, loves to read about it, loves to watch it on TV. But of course, there must always be a final girl. But that's not neither here nor there. Let's see what it's about. In horror movies, the final girls are always the ones left standing when the credits roll. They made it through the worst night of their lives. But what happens after? Lynette Tarkington is a real-life final girl who survived a massacre. For more than a decade, she's been meeting with 5 other final girls and their therapist in a support group for those who endured the unthinkable, working to put their lives back together. Then one woman misses a meeting, and Lynette's worst fears are realized. Someone knows about the group and is determined to rip their lives apart again, piece by piece. But the thing about Final Girls is no matter how bad the odds, how dark the night, how sharp the knife, they will never, ever give up. I have come to love Grady Hendrix over the past 4 years. How to Sell a Haunted House is one of my favorites. The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, another favorite. I think there's a third one that I really enjoyed. So I'm going to give this another shot with a different mindset. And now really understanding how Grady Hendrix writes, I'm looking forward to giving this another shot. Okay, now back to our regularly scheduled program. So, The Lost Village, I cannot figure what language this is translated from. My best guess is Swedish. I looked her up. She lives in Sweden with her American boyfriend. And so the foreword, and then I'm looking her up, and then I see that my local Barnes & Noble has this book, The Resting Place, that I have recently heard about, and for whatever reason, like I said, I didn't buy it. I've been thinking I was going to be, a non-book buyer for a minute. Deep-rooted secrets, a twisted family history, and a house that will never let go. Eleanor lives with prosopagnosia. Apologies if I mispronounce that. The inability to recognize a familiar person's face. It causes stress, acute anxiety. No shit. It can make you question what you think you know. When Eleanor walked on the scene of her capriciously cruel grandmother Vivian's murder, she came face to face with the killer, a maddening expression that means nothing to someone like her. With each passing day, the horror of having come so close to a murderer and of not knowing if they'd be back overtakes her dreams and her waking moments, threatening her perception of reality. Then a lawyer calls. Vivian has left her a house, a looming estate tucked away in the Swedish woods. Yes, she must be Swedish. This is translated also by Alexandra Fleming. Sorry, we interrupt this program again. Then a lawyer calls, like we said. Vivian has left her a house, a looming estate tucked away in the Swedish woods, the place her grandfather died suddenly, a place that has housed a chilling past for over 50 years. Eleanor, her steadfast boyfriend Sebastian, her reckless aunt Veronica, the lawyer, all will go to this house of secrets looking for answers. But as they get closer to uncovering the truth, they'll wish they had never come to disturb what rests there. Dang. I'm not putting that in the read soon pile, but hopefully I will get to it soon. Anywho, so there is another piece of translated fiction. This is I Remember You by Yrsa Sigurdardottir. This is translated from Icelandic by Philip. Can't read my own writing. Rufton? That's what we're going with. This is another book again I learned about from Sadie Hartman, aka Mother Horror. And I love Reno books. I love found fiction. I love all that. This seems to be a little bit of like a renovation kind of story. In this terrifying tale, 3 friends set to work renovating a rundown house in a remote, totally isolated location. But they soon realize that they are not as alone as they thought. Something wants them to leave. Meanwhile, in a nearby town, a young doctor investigating the suicide of an elderly woman discovers that she was obsessed with his vanished son. When the 2 stories collide, the shocking truth becomes horribly clear. And I don't know what that is. I do know that where she lives in Reykjavik, Iceland, and in her, you cannot see this probably, but in her author photo, she's wearing a coat, like a full-blown coat, fur lined, so it must be very cold. Not far from me, there are direct flights to Reykjavik? I don't know how to pronounce it. Anywho, one of these days I'm going to go there, preferably in the summertime. Okay, finally, the final book is, actually Sadie Hartman actually mentioned this, but I had already bought it the day before because it was going to be an auto buy for me, and that is Memorials by Richard Chizmar. I started reading him sometime in the past 4 years after I moved into this house and started reading a lot more. I read his Boogeyman series, I read the Gwendy series that he did with Stephen King, and I really adored the Gwendy series. I liked the Boogeyman series. The first is Chasing the Boogeyman, second is Becoming the Boogeyman. My sister, I think, took my recommendation on Chasing the Boogeyman and listened to it on audio and enjoyed it as well, I believe. Chizmar also has a publishing company called Cemetery Dance. I've bought some of their stuff before, but this was at my local Barnes & Noble, so I picked it up there on I would say a chance trip, but let's not kid ourselves. I was there on purpose. 1983. 3 students from a small college embark on a week-long road trip to film a documentary on roadside memorials for their American Studies class. The project starts out as a fun adventure, with long stretches of empty road and nightly campfires where they begin to open up with one another. But as they venture deep into the Appalachian backwoods, the atmosphere begins to darken. They notice more and more of the memorials feature a strange, unsettling symbol hinting at a sinister secret. Paranoia sets in when it appears they are being followed. Their vehicle is tampered with overnight, and some of the locals appear to be anything but welcoming. Before long, the students can't help but wonder if these roadside deaths were really random accidents, or is something terrifying at work here. I will probably read this soon. I've enjoyed Richard Chizmar's work. I really, nothing scares me anymore, but I did relate to Becoming the Boogeyman and Chasing the Boogeyman, so I look forward to Memorials. It's an interesting concept, and there's found footage in here, so you know I love that. Anywho, that is my spooky book haul. It's actually a combination of hauls. I would love to hear from you if you have read or listened to any of these books. If you have any recommendations for spooky season, knowing that nothing scares me, I'd love to hear from them. And finally, I would love to hear any thoughts you have about what you would like to hear about on this channel. What kind of books would you like to explore? I'm game for almost anything. And that is going to be it. This is my last video for the week. I am contemplating, it's like 4:30 here, but it's been a gray day, so it's really not as dark as it appears on film, but I'm contemplating, now that we're going into the holiday season and it's daylight savings time ends around the corner, I'm contemplating doing some more evening, dark, like atmospheric videos as opposed to doing them all on Saturday and Sunday mornings. But I'd like to hear what you think about that. That is it for me. I hope you have a great reading week. Happy reading!